In season 20, Snapped profiled the story of Misook Wang, who lost her mother when she was just a little girl.
It's hard on anybody not having a mom to rely on.
In her mid-30s, Misook married, and her mother-in-law, Linda Taida, filled the void from her childhood.
She really looked to Linda as her mom.
But when Linda mysteriously disappeared, Misook would become the prime suspect.
Linda Taida had been set up in a ruse.
She plotted this thing, she planned it, she took a number of steps to make it happen.
Now, 8 years into her 55-year sentence, Misook is ready to tell her side of the story on camera for the very first time.
I got the first-degree murder, but it's not, intentionally to happen. It's just happened at that moment.
She said, this is merely a self-defense case against this 100-pound, 70-year-old woman.
Her hands killed somebody, and not just anybody, her mother-in-law.
Misook's story doesn't end with her conviction for Linda's murder. Her trial brought renewed interest in yet another homicide case from a decade prior.
A 3-year-old girl was killed.
Basically, the child was smothered.
I need an ambulance. I need a van. My daughter's dying, I think.
Barton McNeil, Misook's ex-lover, was found guilty of his daughter's murder. But questions have always remained whether or not he truly belongs behind bars.
From the beginning, for years now, Barton McNeil has been saying that Misook murdered his daughter, but no one took him seriously until she was arrested for murdering Linda.
When Linda Taida then was murdered, it was like, wow, Misook really has the capacity to kill.
The Illinois Innocence Project is coming on board to take the case.
In a stunning interview, the man who spent 22 years behind bars for his daughter's murder comes forward to share his story and explain why he believes his ex-lover, Misook Wang, is the true killer.
She wanted to hurt me. She wanted me back.
There was numerous calls made to the police department because of domestic-related issues.
I told the court, my wrongful conviction is going to cost the life of some other murder victim down the road. And I believe that's exactly what happened.
That's not true. So I don't know what's going on. But it's obvious it's not me. My name is Misook Wang. There are a lot of information is not the right, so I just want to talk to you guys about my side of the story too. About me and my mother-in-law, about what happened that day. I can tell the true story about what happened.
This tragedy started on September the 5th, 2011, about an hour south of Chicago in a town called Crest Hill.
At 8 p.m., worried husband Larry Taida phoned the police to report that his wife Linda, a 70-year-old Chinese immigrant, was missing.
She worked as an interpreter for a number of businesses up in Chicago.
She would help Asian immigrants in securing loans and getting English classes.
According to Larry, Linda left home before dawn that morning to pick up a client in Bloomington and drive them to Chicago's Chinatown, which was about an hour and a half away.
She gave me a kiss on the cheek and said, "I'll see you in a little while."
She was supposed to be home back with Larry later that morning.
But as morning turned to afternoon and his wife still hadn't returned, Larry began to worry.
About every hour on the hour, I was phone calling her and leaving messages, call me.
Linda's husband didn't appear to be alone in his fear either. Linda's son Don and his wife, 45-year-old Misook Wang, also joined in the frantic search.
They tried to figure out what's going on with his mom and maybe somebody kidnapped her or something. So I said, oh my God, I just can't sleep. I just can't eat. Just crazy. Each day is crazy.
When Misook first learned that Linda was missing, she was just as concerned as everyone else, at least on the face of it.
Although she'd married into a Chinese-American family in 2003, Misook's story started in South Korea. Born in 1965, Misook's mother died when she was just a toddler.
Then my mom died. I'm 2-year-old. My sister is 5 months old. So I have jealousy of a lot of people have a mom. That's the most jealous thing I have in my life.
With her father unable to take care of her, Misook was sent to live with relatives.
They didn't treat her very nicely. In fact, treated her more as a servant.
Her upbringing wasn't the best. The black sheep is what she basically felt like.
After a painful childhood, by the age of 23, Misook's fortune seemed to change when she met an American GI named Andy Nowlin.
I met Misook while I was stationed in the Army, and I was stationed at Camp Pelham, Korea. She was a very kind person. She had a very good heart. That was one of the reasons why I fell in love with her.
I'm 23-year-old. I was studying with my first husband, Andy, and I living with him in the house, a very small town, like maybe 2,000 people live there. He promised me, I'll bring to America.
In February of 1988, when Andy left the Army and returned home to Illinois, Misook followed.
We got married in March, and Michelle, our daughter, was born the following August.
Money was tight for the young family, at least in Misook's mind.
Money is very important, and I don't have no extra money to do a lot of things, really. He never let me touch his money. Sometimes I like to have some brand name stuff, like a polo shirt,
Eventually, Misook's lust for material wealth became a major point of contention for the young couple.
You could just hear the fights. We're not making enough money. Somebody else has got this car. Why don't we have that car? And I could hear my dad say, there's only so much I can do.
She was just so money hungry. I was working 2 full-time jobs, working 80 hours a week, and it still wasn't enough.
There was also this supposed extramarital affair that Misook was involved with.
She was working here at the restaurant here in Bloomington, and she fell in love with a coworker. She was gone for a month. I was done.
Between the affair and the money issues, Misook and Andy called it quits after 10 years of marriage, and Misook took a new translating job at a local call center.
It was there that Misook met the man who would become her next husband, Don Wang.
I work in the Korean section, Don working the Mandarin. I learned a lot of Chinese stuff from him.
Misook and Don bonded over their love of traditional Asian cuisine.
He teach me a lot of different food, and I show him about Korean thing, Korean food. That's the reason we gotta just fall in love with each other, because we share a lot of things together.
The couple decided to tie the knot in 2003. But when Misook said, "I do," she wasn't just marrying Don, she was joining his tight-knit family, led by its matriarch, Linda.
Linda is only son. So we call Don Mama's boy. So I want to keep the Don for my relationship. I had to be nice to Linda.
Don and his mother had a very, very, very close, relationship.
And the relationship between mother and son became even closer after Linda's marriage with Don's father ended.
They called each other 4 or 5 times every day, 7 days a week.
Don provided moral support for his mother. In return, Linda used money from her booming interpreter business to help support Don and Misook financially while he pursued his PhD.
Linda, just like my mom to me. She was nice to me and helped me out. We do a lot of common each other, so we do a lot of things share together. We shopping a lot. So sometimes I wear her clothes, and sometimes I let her wear my clothes or my pocketbook and stuff. So we are very close.
They would go to Chicago and go to the spas together all the time. They would also go to Peoria on the riverboat. They would go to the casino.
In fact, thanks to her mother-in-law's generosity, Misook finally had the lifestyle that she had always wanted.
She drove a Mercedes-Benz. She always wanted the latest fashions, latest clothes, latest designers.
Linda even gave Misook the money to open her own sewing and alterations business.
I want to open my own business, so I don't have to worry about for somebody working with me, then have a problem, have to fire me or something like that.
In 2006, Misook repaid Linda's kindness with the gift her mother-in-law wanted most: a grandson.
I have my son born in 2006 there. I'm so happy, very, very happy about it.
For someone who had such an unstable upbringing, finally having this husband and this child and this tight family unit with a mother-in-law who was there to help out with babysitting and finances, it must have been very comforting for Misook to finally feel like she had the American dream.
4 years later, Misook's mother-in-law had her own happy news. At the age of 69, Linda had found love.
We met on Match.com, and I met her at a restaurant, and everything sort of clicked real nice.
Linda and Larry Tida married in January of 2011.
Linda and Larry had wanted to live out the rest of their golden years with each other.
But tragedy would soon befall the elderly couple. On September 5th, 2011, just 8 months after their wedding, Linda mysteriously vanished. Coming up, Linda's friends and family suspect foul play.
I think it was a setup.
And when the truth comes out, it leaves everyone stunned.
A waitress from a Chinese restaurant had a strange story to tell the police.
So that moment I know it's gonna happen, you know, I know they're gonna die.
Around 8 p.m. on September 5th, 2011, Larry Tida called the Crest Hill, Illinois Police Department and filed a missing persons report. His wife, Linda, a business consultant and interpreter who worked with the Chinese immigrant community, had left home before dawn that morning to pick up a mysterious client and drive them to Chicago.
I had this bad feeling something had happened.
Hoping to find a lead on Linda's whereabouts, investigators pulled her phone records.
Our first thing is to look at phone records. You know, this day and age, everybody's tied to their cell phones.
The last bounce off a cell phone tower from Linda's cell phone came from a tower in Bloomington.
Since Linda was supposed to meet her client in Bloomington before their drive to the Windy City, police suspected that same client may have had something to do with her disappearance.
When they started tracing that cell phone, they found out real fast it never made it to Chicago.
Their initial part of the investigation, police tried to track down the client who had hired Linda to come to Bloomington.
But Linda's husband, Larry Tida, was only able to provide very limited details about this individual.
He didn't really have much information about who the client was. The client was supposedly a Chinese woman who needed a ride to Chicago, to Chinatown, where she was going to be needing the services of a translator.
The investigation at this phase goes into talking to everyone Linda knows in Bloomington.
Linda had friends here in the community, but nobody had any contact with her. Nobody knew anything about where Linda had gone or who she might have met with.
Investigators also reached out to Linda's son, Don, and his wife, 45-year-old Misook Wang, who lived in Bloomington.
They made contact with Misook that evening.
The detective asked me like a basic question, just like, oh, when did you see last time? When did you see this day for her? Did you hear from anything from her? Those like general questions. I just as much I can give to,
Misook told the investigators that her husband was out of town on a trip to California. She also said that she hadn't heard anything from Linda that day, which was unusual.
Misook told investigators she also had been trying to reach her mother-in-law all day. She and her mother-in-law spoke on a daily basis, so she also found it odd that she was unable to reach her.
In the days following Linda's disappearance, the local Chinese community launched their own search for the missing 70-year-old.
The Chinese community was actively trying to pursue what could have happened to her.
But by September 6th, with Linda missing for more than 36 hours, even the police were starting to fear the worst.
My gut instinct is something bad's going on here. This isn't just a missing person.
Linda's son Don appeared to agree when he sat down with the detectives on the 8th after returning home from California. He told them he was convinced that the client who wanted Linda to take her to Chicago had been some sort of trap.
More and more, I think it was a setup. There's some bad people. They come from out of town. They even come in a nice town like this. They follow you. They know you're rich.
In fact, Don said that he had been so worried that his mother had been abducted that he'd left a message for the kidnappers on her voicemail.
I said, if you take my mom, please return to me, or to me. She worth more than $1 million to us. This is for money to be resolved.
But if it was a kidnapping, why hadn't anyone contacted the family for ransom?
If you'd have been kidnapped, somebody would have got a phone call or a note or some sort of communication. That hasn't happened.
Their fears that something really bad had happened to Linda were growing by the minute.
On September 12th, after Linda had been missing for 7 days, a stunning break led the search in a surprising new direction.
A waitress had heard that Linda is missing, and she comes forward about a weird thing that she had done on another person's behalf.
According to the waitress, it all started when a well-dressed woman she'd never seen before approached her at work on September 4th, the day before Linda disappeared.
She went in there and asked if they spoke Chinese.
And when the waitress said yes, the mystery woman had asked her for a favor.
She asked her to make a phone call for her.
A phone call to Linda Taida.
She asked the waitress to make this phone call, saying that she needed a ride to Chicago, that she would pay her $500 to do it, and it had to be on this certain day and time. And Linda agreed to do so. But this was common for Linda, right? This is something she would do in the normal course of her business.
In reality, the waitress and Linda Taida had both been set up in a ruse.
This is all a scheme for reasons they're unsure of at this point, but a scheme nevertheless.
And just who was this mystery woman who'd set them up? The waitress couldn't tell police, but the restaurant's security cameras could. Coming up, the investigators recover a crucial piece of video.
When Linda arrives, you could see the shock and surprise on her face.
But the real shock is who else gets caught on tape.
They were able to clearly see that it was Misook Wang.
By September 12th, 2011, Bloomington police had finally gotten their first big break in the disappearance of 70-year-old Linda Taida, who had been missing for 7 days.
A waitress at one of the Chinese restaurants in Bloomington told police a woman she had never met before came to her on September 4th, the day before Linda disappeared, and asked her to place a call to Linda Taida for a ride to Chicago.
The waitress didn't know who the mystery woman was, but fortunately for investigators, the restaurant had surveillance cameras.
They were able to pull that surveillance video, and they were able to clearly see that it was Misook Wang who had gone into the restaurant that day.
The waitress told investigators that Misook asked her to tell Linda to meet her at a nearby grocery store in the early morning hours of September 5th. And when the investigators pulled the security footage from that store, they made another stunning discovery.
Linda pulls into the parking lot, and further back in the parking lot, you see a pair of headlights come on and pull in next to Linda's vehicle.
Linda saw that it was her daughter-in-law who had met her and not a client.
On the video, both women got out of their cars and Misook started screaming at her mother-in-law.
You could see the shock and surprise on Linda's face.
Linda was trying to leave, but Misook would grab her by the arm, grab her by her purse, grab her by her shirt.
Just as it appeared the argument was on the verge of turning violent, it was suddenly over.
The verbal altercation ends with the two women getting in their cars and leaving.
Even though the two women appeared to have parted ways after the altercation, it was clear to investigators that Misook Wang had something to do with her mother-in-law's disappearance. On the evening of September 12th, they brought her in for questioning.
Two detectives come to my shop and ask me to come down to the police station to talk to me and talk. So that moment I know it's gonna happen, I know they find out.
When was the last time you saw Linda?
Like 2-3 weeks ago, I don't know.
Of course, I denied everything I saw her. She, I cannot say nothing that time I was scared,
During the time that police were questioning Misook at the police department, the investigators were at her sewing shop and her apartment.
We got this big old ass dumpster right behind her shop, and the cops find evidence of the murder in that dumpster.
I found a lot of ID cards and credit cards that were cut up into small pieces. I was still able to make out the name of our missing person, Linda Tida.
A more gruesome discovery was made as well.
They also find Linda's clothes, the last clothes that she was wearing before going missing.
Her shirt was found in the dumpster with some blood on it.
And instantly I knew that this was, a crucial piece of evidence that we'd found in the dumpster.
Crime scene investigators immediately conveyed that information back to the detectives questioning Misook.
We have a lot of evidence. I'm going to be 100% honest with you. It's all coming back to you.
So then he just putting out a lot of picture from my garbage can. They find her clothes and stuff. So then, I know the moment, I have to tell the truth.
Misook told detectives she would never purposefully hurt her mother-in-law.
I never ever talk louder to Linda or, anything upset about her, anything. Sometimes, or not agree with me what I say or something, but always we work out together.
However, according to Misook, something had eventually come between them. Her marriage to Linda's son, Don.
I just find out he got cheating me. And,
he's cheating? Okay.
Yeah.
Misook believed that her husband was having an affair.
And it wasn't just some casual hookup either. Misook suspected that her husband was having an affair with Linda's assistant, Jenny.
It was devastating on my mom. Jenny and my mom have known each other for a really long time.
She's a Chinese, just like my husband Don, and they talking to every night. So that time I know there's something going on. But she tried to explain to me they are just, like brother and sister.
Misook said that Linda's attitude about the alleged affair was just as devastating.
She also suspected that her mother-in-law may have known about the relationship and approved of it.
So very close to her, I believe so. They call every day each other.
I feel like a betrayed. That moment I have the betrayed. I feel like, she never told me what's going on. That I trust her like my mom.
Mom is more like it. First time she's my side, then suddenly after all this, she got lost job and stuff, then he suddenly hate me like a ghost,
She doesn't want to even talk to you anymore. That hurts.
I only have one mother right now, that moment, and feel like she loves me no more like it used to do.
Despite the betrayal Misook felt, she was determined to keep her family unit intact.
I don't want to divorce with him because, I want to keep this family.
Misook said she had arranged the parking lot meeting through the waitress as a last-ditch attempt to enlist her mother-in-law's support.
I said, can you do me a favor? I need to call somebody, but she don't want to answer phone. So could you tell her to come down to Bloomington tomorrow or 5 o'clock?
Misook's plan worked, and Linda showed up at the parking lot on the morning of September 5th, expecting to meet her new client.
She saw me, then, she saw me, so I said, why are you here? So I said, Mom, I'm sorry, but, I'm the one who called you to come over here. Then she said, what's it mean? You treat me? you know? So I said, it's not the truth. You don't answer my phone. You don't talk to me no more. So I have to do this. She said, no, I don't want to talk to you. I don't want to do nothing to do with you. She's just very upset at the time. Then, you know, she left. And she go their way, I go different way.
Misook revealed to detectives that the argument didn't end there.
According to Misook, Linda chose to follow her back to the sewing shop.
I mean, she called you?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Then, you know, she tried to scream like, you know.
She started screaming?
Yeah.
Misook said Linda just started hitting her.
So we got a little bit fighting each other too, really.
Okay.
Hard fighting each other.
So I got to fall down there. Then she tried to punch my face, you know, my arms bruised and everything. Then she's starting to choking me.
Misook claimed that in her desperate attempt to break free, she had done what she could to fight back.
Somebody punched my body like that, I get just black out. I lost my mind, you know, I was just so scared, you know. So she tried to choking me like that. That's like choking her back, you know.
Misook said that in their struggle, her 70-year-old mother-in-law had succumbed first.
I said, oh my God, why she not get up? Oh my God, mom, I tried to wake, you know, then she don't get up. That's like, oh my God, then I hear her breathing and, you know, that I don't hear her breathing. I said, I know that, oh my God, what I did. Just scared that time, what I did, really. I don't have no experience like that, you know.
Really, I don't mean to that, but she tried to kill me first, you know. She scratched me everywhere, like, you know, you can see my scratch here, you know.
To investigators, it seemed questionable that the beloved 70-year-old grandmother would physically assault anyone, especially her own daughter-in-law.
It's not unheard of, but it's unlikely. In whether I believe that's what happened, it doesn't matter. I just need her to keep talking about it.
That moment I get afraid, you know. She tried to kill me something. Okay. That's what I tried to kill her too.
Coming up, Misook explains how she tried to cover her tracks.
Now dirty deed's been done. You got a problem. What am I going to do with this body?
I tell my mom, I tell Linda, I'm sorry I had to bury you like in this way.
Does this look right, or do you think that this is the area where she might be? Okay.
September 12, 2011. In Bloomington, Illinois, Misook Wang had just confessed to the murder of her 70-year-old mother-in-law, Linda Taida.
She said she strangled Linda to death because she was defending herself. This is merely a self-defense case against this 100-pound, 70-year-old woman.
Misook said once she realized that her mother-in-law was dead, she hid her body in the back of the sewing shop.
Where was Linda while you were over? Out of sight, obviously.
Yeah, I covered with the blanket and stuff.
Okay.
I should have called the car. I should have not hide the body. But, you know, at that time, I thought, you know, just lost the mind, basically. So I don't know. If what happened, I called 911. Then what is going to happen? I am not American citizen. So I have to think what I'm going to do.
On the night of September 6th, nearly 2 full days after the murder, and with news of Linda's disappearance making headlines, Misook knew she needed to find a burial spot for Linda's body.
Now dirty deed's been done. Linda's been murdered, and you got a problem. What am I going to do with this body?
I don't know where to bury her, really. I'm looking for some good place, you know. I don't know where. I don't even know where I'm going. Just want to find some place, nice place, really.
Misook explained she finally found a spot in a nature preserve on the outskirts of Chicago.
I can see so many Chicago, you know, so I said, maybe that place is a good place. I tell my mom that time, I tell Linda, I'm sorry I had to bury you like in this way.
That's when Misook revealed another chilling detail about what happened.
Probably the most shocking and bizarre part of this entire crime is that her 5-year-old son was with her the entire time. He was old enough to know what was going on to some degree. And so it's likely that this memory has stayed with him as he's grown up and probably affects him to this day.
He was in car seat?
Yeah.
Was he asleep?
Yeah. I cannot left him by himself.
He's half asleep that time. I tell my son, are we going to Chicago tomorrow also, you know? He just don't really know what's going on, nothing.
This is bad on every level. It's bad on every level imaginable.
After her interrogation with police, Misook agreed to lead them to her mother-in-law's body.
If we take you up there, can you show us where?
So we're out in an area off of, this would be the mile marker 241, and we've been looking for quite a bit, and I just wanted to ask you, this area here, do you think that this is the area where she might be? Okay.
Despite Misook's story, investigators weren't so sure she really committed the terrible act in self-defense.
In my experience, someone who has murdered somebody in self-defense doesn't drive up 50, 70 miles to bury them in a shallow grave in a nature preserve, then drive away and act like nothing had happened.
Linda's family was just as skeptical. After Misook was placed in the McLean County Jail, her husband Don came down to the station to speak with detectives a second time.
Don Wang was very suspicious of his wife's account of what had happened, and he did not hold back when he talked to investigators.
Don was going to divorce Misook when he returned from his trip from California.
But Don claimed it wasn't because of any alleged affair he was having with his mother's assistant, Jenny.
When talking with Don and Jenny, it was just a friendship, platonic friendship.
Instead, Don explained the real reason he wanted to end his relationship with Misook was similar to the catalyst for her divorce from Andy Nowlin.
Misook's lust for material gain and for wealth started to consume the marriage. Misook had a penchant to steal things.
She got arrested for shoplifting a month or two before the murder.
According to Misook, the whole thing was an accident.
So one day I was shop in the mall. I put a lot of stuff into my stroller. And I paid for everything mostly, but a couple things of them dropped there. But, so I come out and, the security tell me come inside. So I go there. They basically got the shoplifting for a couple of clothes from there. So I try to explain to them. They don't listen to me. So I got charged for that. I got locked down there for the county jail.
Don and his mother had been embarrassed by the arrest.
They refused to post bond for her, and this really angered Misook.
Don said that Misook had been furious, so mad that when she did get out, she'd gone to the bank and cleaned out the couple's joint checking account.
The fact is, she was stealing money. There's thousands of dollars missing from their joint account.
Misook, however, tells a different story yet again.
No. Happened before that shoplifting happened. So I take that money before that happened, not after, because I found that my husband cheated me for 3 years. That's the reason I take that money, because I don't know what's going to happen.
Investigators believed the missing money may have played a crucial role in Linda's murder.
Police suspect she was promising, I've got the money at my shop. Just follow me, I want to talk to you, I want to explain this. So Linda, being the dutiful mother, not wanting to see her son go through all this grief and agony and be whole again with his money, she goes back there. Critical mistake.
Later that same day, investigators finally received Linda's autopsy report, and it brought up even more doubt in Misook's version of events.
The description of how badly beaten Linda had been. She had the bruising around her neck, around her face. Her arms were battered. She had some big bruising on her head where it was obvious she was hit with some type of an object.
According to the pathologist, in order for Misook to be able to strangle her mother-in-law in the manner that she described, she would have had to have been strangled for a long period of time after she had become unconscious.
To investigators, Misook's claims that Linda's death was an accident were seeming more and more unlikely.
The threat would have been over with, and yet Misook continued to choke Linda Tyder to her death.
Self-defense ends when someone can't fight back anymore.
Investigators charged Misook with first-degree murder.
So let's dispense with this whole fairy tale that this is a self-defense case. This is a planned execution. This is not something that was accidental, spur of the moment.
Just that I got the first degree murder right now, and tell myself, oh, this is something not right. It's not the first degree murder. It's you plan to kill somebody. This is not plan to kill somebody,
Coming up, Misook's accident claims are challenged once again when investigators uncover a deeper motive behind the crime.
She laid it right out in her own handwriting. It was over money.
Misook believed that if Linda died, she'd be entitled to at least half of that life insurance policy in a divorce settlement.
And later, another exclusive prison interview sheds light on Misook's dark past, detailing a murder case that she was a suspect in a decade prior to the death of Linda Tyder.
We go back 10 years previous, and a little girl who is the daughter of Misook's boyfriend gets murdered, strangled.
He was trying to, each step of the way, explain that you need to start investigating Misook.
Barton McNeil, the man behind bars for murder, comes forward to give his side of the story and explains why he believes his daughter's true killer is Misook Wang.
I absolutely had nothing to do with the killing of my daughter. I think Misook killed my daughter because it's just too much of a coincidence of timing.
By the fall of 2011, Illinois investigators had unearthed a wealth of evidence against Misook Wang for the September 5th strangulation murder of her mother-in-law, 70-year-old Linda Tyder.
We've got motive, we've got disposal of the body, and then we have evidence in the garbage behind the shop.
But in November, 2 months after Misook's arrest, investigators got another huge break in the case.
While she was in jail awaiting her trial, Misook was writing letters.
She doesn't realize every letter you write is copied before it leaves the facility.
All of her correspondence was in Korean, and I think she felt that we would not be able to know what she was saying because she was saying it in Korean.
Misook was wrong.
We had an assistant in our office who was Korean. In her letters, Misook spoke about the fact that Linda had a life insurance policy that Don was the beneficiary of.
If something happened to Linda, Don would get all this money.
But not all of it.
Misook believed that if Linda died, she would be entitled to at least half of that life insurance policy in a divorce settlement. She was willing to do whatever it took to make sure that she was financially set.
After those letters were translated, they now had a new motive for the death.
She laid it right out in her own handwriting. It was over money.
But according to Misook, investigators had it all wrong and mistranslated her letters.
They say that I killed my mother-in-law because for the insurance money. That's not true. I am not the beneficiary for the insurance. What she has is not the right story there.
On December 10th, 2012, the trial against Misook Wang began in a McLean County courtroom, and prosecutors came out swinging.
They immediately began to challenge Misook's claims of self-defense.
The medical examiner proves how difficult it is to strangle somebody and kill him by manual strangulation. The basic rule is 6 minutes without oxygen, you're dead. So she's strangling her for a long time. Long after she passed out and was unable to fight, she kept getting strangled.
To try and prove that Misook wasn't the monster that the prosecutors made her out to be, the defense called her to the stand on December 17th.
I'm the one tell the truth what happened, just like what I talk to you right now. I thought, one person that those jury people can hear maybe my heart, what I'm saying to you true, then maybe, they understand me, then, I can get hung jury, whatever.
But would the jury believe Misook's self-defense claims? On December 18th, 2012, they reached a verdict.
It didn't take the jury long, based upon the evidence that we had, to come back and return with a guilty verdict of first-degree murder.
Just sitting there, I felt so helpless for my mom. I felt so bad for her.
Something is not right, because I'm not the first-degree murderer. That's why I just, I can't even cry. I just, too much shock, so I can't say nothing about it.
At her sentencing hearing on March 1st, Misook received a total of 55 years in prison.
Misook was sentenced to 50 years for the murder, an additional 5 years for concealing a homicide.
50 years is not, I don't deserve that because I am not intentionally kill her. But 5 years, I think I take them because I do wrong. I should have called the cop. I should have not hide the body.
I fell to the ground and I just started crying. I remember looking at her hands and just staring at them and saying, her hands killed somebody, and not just anybody, her mother-in-law.
She never apologized to me or anything like that, or said anything to me about she's sorry that she did it. I'd probably never forgive her for what she's done. Whatever she got, she deserved.
Misook had been sentenced to 55 years behind bars for murder, but her story is far from over. The media attention swirling around her conviction brought renewed interest in a decade-old case in which Misook's ex-lover accused her of his young daughter's murder.
From the beginning, for years now, Barton McNeil has been saying that Misook murdered his daughter, but no one took him seriously until she was arrested for murdering Linda.
When Linda Tita then was murdered, it was like, wow, Misook really has the capacity to kill.
In a rare interview, Barton McNeil comes forward to plead his case and relive the details of the 1998 homicide that put him in prison.
I believe Misook was indeed the person behind my daughter's murder, just as I maintained since day one. For many years, I only dreamed about having the opportunity to talk about my wrongful conviction and the injustice that Christina suffers from to this day.
According to Barton McNeil, the morning of June 16, 1998 started out like any other.
As was custom for the nights that he had custody of his daughter, he would sleep in the living room on the couch, and he would let her sleep in the bedroom.
I woke up about 7:20 that morning. As I was passing the bedroom, I said, Christina, time to wake up.
But Barton claims his worst fear was soon realized.
I went into the bedroom, and as I went around the bed, I tripped over the window fan. And about that time, I turned the opposite direction to Christina, and I saw her gray face, and I put my hand to her head, and she was cold to the touch, and that's when I dialed 911.
911, what's your emergency? I need an ambulance. I need it. North Evans. My daughter's dying, I think.
You feel the emotion. You feel the pain of a father who's just lost his loved one right there in front of him.
Is she breathing? No. She's not breathing at all? No. Okay. Christina. Christina.
When paramedics arrived, they tried to resuscitate 3-year-old Christina, but they were unsuccessful.
I was catatonic with grief, and I could not understand how she could have died so suddenly.
With no visible injuries present, paramedics didn't suspect any foul play and declared that Christina died of natural causes.
They believed that she had died of natural causes because the year prior, she had been hospitalized because of a severe asthma attack.
However, what initially appeared to be a sad tragedy would soon spiral into a complex homicide investigation.
He's starting to say, wait a second, someone got in here and did something to my daughter.
Coming up, shocking signs of foul play are revealed.
There were evidence of trampled plants and a scuff mark below the window.
Holes had been cut into each lower corner of the screen.
And Barton makes another desperate 911 call.
This is Bart again. I want a whole detective team. I mean, with forensics and everything. My daughter was murdered last night.
Just over a decade before Misook Wang was sentenced for the murder of her mother-in-law, Linda Tida, Misook's ex-lover, Barton McNeil, made a terrifying 911 call to Bloomington police.
911, what's your emergency? I need an ambulance. I need a van. North Evans. My daughter's dying, I think. Christina. Christina.
Paramedics pronounced 3-year-old Christina dead by natural causes at 8 a.m. But after her body was sent off for an autopsy, Barton claims he began to discover signs of foul play.
This just keeps returning to me over and over again as I'm thinking, what caused Christina's death? How could she have died so suddenly? She was fine last night. And I kept thinking about the fan being on the floor, and how did the fan get on the floor last night when it was securely mounted in the window? And I'm slowly, this sort of picture is sort of starting to emerge, and I'm just having this like absolute horrible, dreadful thought that maybe Christina's death was not of natural causes after all.
Barton says he decided to conduct his own investigation.
I just keep thinking about the fan on the floor. I'm like, I'm going to take a look at this window. And sure enough, from a distance of 10 feet, I could see plainly that the screen now was unlatched. Holes had been cut into each lower corner of the screen. And those holes were not there last night, but they're there now.
Barton says the condition of the window screen wasn't the only thing that raised an alarm.
There were evidence of trampled plants and a scuff mark below the window.
And this is when, I mean, I knew that Christina had been murdered.
Barton McNeil placed his second 911 call of the day, this time certain that his 3-year-old daughter was the victim of a homicide.
So he called back 911 breathlessly again. This is Barton McNeil. You all were here earlier. We need you to come back immediately.
I have reason to believe now that she was murdered, and I need a detective here immediately. Okay.
He calls multiple times back to the Bloomington Police Department, demanding them to bring out their forensic unit.
No emergency. This is Bart again. Okay. No detective. And sir, I want a whole detective team. I mean, with forensics and everything. My daughter was murdered last night.
At 7 p.m., over an hour after Barton's initial phone call pleading for a homicide detective, one finally arrived on the scene.
He said, okay, Bart, show me what it is that you think represents evidence of a break-in. And Bart then pointed out all those things: the fan on the floor, the holes in the window, the trampled plants, the scuff mark below the window.
As forensic investigators continued to pore over the crime scene, the detective asked Barton to come back to the Bloomington police station to give an official statement. And what he said would give investigators a stunning new lead.
He was adamant that his daughter definitely did not die of natural causes. He believed she had to have died at the hands of his violent ex-girlfriend, Misook Nolan.
Coming up, Barton reveals a tumultuous relationship.
The bottom line was she was stalking me pretty severely.
Misook was arrested for domestic battery.
I said, I'm done with you. But she's like, let's go pick up Christina. Let's go pick up Christina. She was like obsessed with trying to get access to Christina.
Just after 7 p.m. on June 16, 1998, Barton McNeil accompanied a detective back to the Bloomington police station as investigators sifted through his home for signs of a homicide. According to Barton, he had discovered evidence that his 3-year-old daughter didn't die of natural causes earlier that day, but was murdered.
He sees that this window fan is now down on the floor. He sees basically the screens, being cut on both sides. And now he's starting to say, wait a second, something else happened here. Someone got into here and did something to my daughter.
He's just going on and on. This is my ex-girlfriend. She did it. She climbed through the window and she did it.
Barton McNeil's ex-girlfriend was none other than Misook Wang, then known as Misook Nolan. Barton told investigators that he had just gotten out of an extremely tumultuous relationship with Misook that had begun 4 years prior.
I met Misook in early June of 1994 when she became a co-worker of mine at a local Bloomington restaurant.
We work in both kitchens, so it was the first job I had at the time.
Misook was still married to Andy Nowlin, and Barton was married as well. But it didn't stop the attraction between them.
Unfortunately, I was married and disloyal to my wife. So I was pursuing romantic interest that I should not have been. In fact, my wife was already pregnant with Christina. So I'm cheating on my wife while she's pregnant.
I don't necessarily agree with every way that Bart handled things with her, but we're all human beings, and he felt Misook was a beautiful person.
Eventually, Bart and Misook left their respective spouses and moved in together.
Christina had been born in January, and we both left our spouses the following April and got an apartment together. Everything seemed fine at first. She had a daughter from her marriage, Michelle, who would stay at our apartment on weekends, and Christina also would stay with me because I had partial custody of her.
Michelle and Christina are very close. I love her too. I take care of her very nicely, just like Michelle.
I saw Christina as my sister. Bart was always, welcoming every time I went to my mom's house. He was, warm. He never made me feel uncomfortable at all.
But 1 year into the relationship, a dark shadow started looming over Barton and Misook's seemingly idyllic union.
She was very jealous. She was convinced that Bart was cheating.
I think it was New Year's Eve, our first year, that we really had a very serious fight. I had worked a double shift, and that night she wanted to go out. I didn't. And I told her that I was not going to go out, and it just went downhill from there. She grabbed a bottle of tequila and started pouring it all over me and yelling and scratching. I guess that we were just making so much noise. Our neighbors must have called the police, and the police came and basically told us to calm down.
But the volatility continued.
There was numerous calls made to the police department because of domestic related issues.
She was sent to anger management classes, and Bart attended some of those sessions.
On April 15th, 1998, the relationship came to a head.
Misook was so angry with him that she took his computer monitor and threw it on the ground and smashed it.
Christina was present during this particular fight. She blocked me from trying to flee the apartment with Christina.
And as Bart was trying to leave the apartment, he was carrying Christina over his shoulder, and Misook physically pushed him back.
This time, Misook was charged with domestic assault.
It just happened. It just happened. I try to do the best I can do, but it's gone a totally long way, and this happened. That's what I can say right now.
Misook had been convicted, and she was scheduled to be sentenced on June 17th. Christina dying on the night of June 15th.
Bart was supposed to testify against Misook at the hearing.
Barton ended things with Misook and moved into his own apartment with Christina. But according to Barton, Misook wasn't willing to let them go that easily.
The bottom line was that she was stalking me pretty severely.
She was going through his garbage, trying to see what he was up to. There was phone calls all the time.
She would drive around his place of employment, and there was neighbors who seen her over there at the house late at night, banging on the door, demanding him to come out.
On June 15th, the night preceding Christina's murder and 2 days before Misook's domestic violence sentencing, Barton agreed to meet her at a local restaurant in an attempt to put their relationship to bed for good.
We go to the Italian restaurant. We have last time we meal together there. So, we already broke up a long time ago.
She insisted that I bring Christina to meet her at this restaurant, and I told her, no, I'm not going to be bringing Christina.
Barton says he told Misook there was no chance of them ever getting back together.
I said, don't call me anymore. You're not welcome in my apartment. I'm done with you.
It was a very bad public altercation between the two of them that was witnessed by people inside the restaurant.
So I got up to leave, and she demands that I talk to her some more. I'm like, no, I'm not going to talk to you anymore. I'm done. And so I try to walk around her out the door, and she dashes out the door ahead of me, sticking me with the bill.
After Barton exited the restaurant, he says he was surprised to find Misook inside his car.
She's like, let's go pick up Christina. Let's go pick up Christina. I said, no, you are not coming with me to go get Christina. Well, let me come to your apartment after you go pick her up, and we'll talk some more. No. And she was like obsessed with trying to get access to Christina. So finally I said, get out of my car.
After that, Bart went to pick up Christina, and she followed him. And he stopped the car and he said, stop following me. Go your own way.
I had to pull over, and I got out of the car. I told her, quit following me. So then I got back in the car and went the rest of my way.
At 8 p.m., Barton picked up Christina from his ex-wife's house.
Afterwards, I took Christina to McDonald's, picked up a Happy Meal, returned to my apartment, parked the car in the back parking lot, which means that I had to walk within inches of Christina's bedroom window. And I can assure you, it was not tampered with. Those holes were not in the screen. The window was securely latched, and the window fan was securely mounted.
But according to Barton, a series of strange events happened later that evening. Coming up, noises from the bedroom raise a chilling possibility.
It sounded like she was talking to somebody in her bedroom.
And police bring Misook in for questioning.
As you know, and I'm sure you know by now, Christina died.
Yeah. I got nothing to do with Christina. I'm not there that day.
On June 16, 1998, Bloomington police were speaking with Barton McNeil about the events leading up to the murder of his 3-year-old daughter, Christina.
From the very first day that it happened, Bart McNeil told authorities that he believed his former girlfriend, Misook Nallen, could be responsible.
Barton said that on the night of June 15th, he put Christina to bed around 10 p.m. and then got on his computer. But two very strange things happened after that.
About 10:30 that night, Misook calls my phone. And I'm like, why are you calling me? You should not be calling me. And she's like, is Christina with you? And I'm like, yeah. She's like, well, what's she doing? I was like, well, she's sleeping. Well, where's she sleeping? She's sleeping in the bed. Now quit bothering me. Don't call me anymore. Goodbye. And I hung up on her.
Around midnight, Barton says another peculiar thing happened.
I went to use the restroom, and as I was walking past the bedroom door, I heard a voice. It spooked me for a minute because it sounded like Christina was talking to somebody in her bedroom. So I opened up the door, and Christina is sitting upright. She's very excited. She's smiling. She's happy. So I walked in and tucked her back in. I said, you know, you need to go to sleep. We've got daycare in the morning. And that was the last time that I saw her alive.
Barton told detectives he went to sleep on the couch 2 hours later, around 2 a.m.
And then the next morning, I found her dead.
Barton told detectives he believed Misook suffocated Christina.
He goes, well, it must have been like through suffocation because I didn't hear her die and I was in the room right next to her.
Since Christina had never screamed out or anything, I just assumed that she had died of smothering or strangulation.
After taking his statement, detectives told Barton McNeil to go home while they waited on Christina's autopsy results, and that they'd be in contact in the morning after they looked into his story. Meanwhile, forensic investigators were continuing to pore over the evidence at the crime scene.
One of the things the police noticed was, in the frame of the window, there was some spider webs.
It's a close-up showing the cobwebs underneath the window frame. Appear to have been there for quite some time.
For investigators, the presence of spider webs on the window challenged Barton's intruder theory.
They said somebody could not have come through that window because they would have broke the webs.
So, if Misook was responsible for this crime, how did she get inside? The only other plausible entrance to the home was the front door, but that didn't seem likely.
She couldn't have come through the front door. I was sleeping on the couch. I would have seen or heard something.
On June 17th, the same day of Misook's domestic violence hearing, investigators decided to bring her in for questioning to ask her about that night firsthand.
As you know, and I'm sure you know by now, Christina died either late Monday night or early Tuesday morning. We're not sure which.
Oh yeah, I'm shocked too. I hear about they say she find out that she died. Christina has asthma, maybe big time asthma problem. So I thought maybe something happened to her like that way. I never thought she got murdered.
She never asks about Christina, never asks about how she dies. For Misook, it was all about her and her relationship with Bart.
Yeah, I'm missing him. I love him. I don't know why. That makes me so upset. That makes me sad. I just tell him I still love him and I care about him.
It's almost to me like Misook had to be in a relationship to feel worthwhile.
The detective asked Misook where she went after her tumultuous dinner with Barton on the night Christina died.
She tells police after she left the restaurant, she went back to her residence and a very good friend of hers came and they spent some time together.
She came to your place?
Yeah.
After you got home from dinner?
Yeah, 7:30.
How long did she stay?
Still too late. Like at 11.
Her friend leaves about 11 o'clock at night, and then she's going to go to bed. And then around 12:30 approximately, she gets a call from her brother from Korea.
I just go try to sleep. And 12:30, my brother from Korea, he called me. And after that, I just sleep.
Misook insisted she knew nothing about Christina's death and certainly wasn't involved.
I got nothing to do with Christina. I'm not there that day, and I love her like my daughter. So it's not nice to blame somebody else like I had nothing to do with it.
Despite her claims of innocence, detectives asked Misook to take a polygraph examination, and the results were eye-opening.
When the questions started to get a little bit more challenging, such as, do you know how she died? She was, deceptive.
However, investigators believed there may be a simple explanation.
They came to the conclusion that Misook must not really understand questions very well, and she doesn't speak very good English. Never mind the fact that she was hired to serve as a translator.
After hours of interrogation, detectives decided to let Misook Nowlin go home and brought Barton McNeil back in. When Barton learned that Misook had been released, he was livid.
And you searched her car. You got a search warrant for her place. And you go through her garbage. The garbage is in the goddamn dump now. You're never gonna find any of it.
Relax. That's why I'm talking to you now, and that's why we're trying to get this so we can get this on.
This is bull. Police chief of police ought to be down there supervising the forensics team right now, or taking my fingerprints or something. Arrest somebody for doing this.
You got some suggestions other than the slip?
There are no other suggestions. It's Misook or a random person, unless you think it's me.
Investigators were beginning to suspect Barton, especially after receiving Christina's autopsy report.
The police had said that there was evidence Christina might have been sexually abused that night.
During the interrogation, they were saying there was some sexual abuse involved with her death, which was the first inkling I had ever heard of anything like that.
Come on, be straight with me, man. Now, cut the crap. This is a bunch of crap. This is my daughter.
There was nothing that could attribute sexual molestation to Bart. There wasn't semen, but they felt that they could insinuate that this must be the motive.
Further causing problems for Barton was the time of death mentioned in the autopsy report.
Based on gastronomic contents, they came up with the timeline of 10:30 p.m., 2 hours after the little girl had her Happy Meal, as opposed to believing Bart's accounting as to timeline, where he last saw his daughter alive and awake at a post-midnight hour around 12:30.
I became aware that I myself was a suspect. They're not going after Christina's killer. They're going after me.
Coming up, police charge Barton with his daughter's murder.
I was in shock when they arrested me. I could not believe that they had come to this conclusion so quickly.
But it won't be long until the focus shifts again to Misook.
Soon after Christina was murdered, Misook was arrested again, this time for beating her own daughter.
On June 17, 1998, police in Bloomington, Illinois were speaking to Barton McNeil for the second time about the events surrounding his daughter's murder.
Christina's autopsy revealed evidence that she had been sexually abused, and so of course police looked to Barton.
However, Barton vehemently denied those allegations.
This is a bunch of crap. This is my daughter.
There's no meat on this bone. They had no prior evidence of child abuse or any prior criminal violence on my part.
From all accounts, he was a devoted father, and Christina was the apple of her father's eye.
To Barton's horror, investigators told him they were charging him with Christina's murder.
They kind of based why they charged him on that timeline of the food contents. This death had to occur between 8 and 10, and the only person around during that time was Bart.
I was in shock when they arrested me. I could not believe that they had come to this conclusion so quickly without even having done any investigation at all.
It was a circumstantial case against Bart. He was the only adult present, so that is definitely a bad fact for him. But there's no real motive here that I saw for him to want to harm his daughter.
Christina had more love from her father than most married people that I know. That is my defense.
Meanwhile, Misook's domestic violence sentencing hearing moved forward without Barton's testimony.
She is sentenced to community service at, I believe it was the Salvation Army.
With Barton awaiting trial for his daughter's murder, his defense team's first plan of action was to conduct a second autopsy on Christina's body, one that could challenge the original medical examiner's findings. But they immediately hit a roadblock.
Before a defense pathologist was able to take a look at the body for himself, she was cremated.
The prosecutors went along with the mother's request to have the body cremated, so there was never a second autopsy done.
After striking out on a second autopsy, Barton's attorneys decided to challenge Misook's timeline from the night of the murder, in which she claimed she was with a friend until 11 p.m.
I don't even go to their house. I am not in his place. I'm in my place, with my friend, pretty late.
Misook's friend confirmed her account, but something that Misook said happened later that night wasn't quite adding up.
She's saying that around 12:30, she gets a call from her brother from Korea.
12:30 a.m. was the same time Barton claimed he heard Christina talking to someone in her room.
There was no record on the phone bill that Misook received a phone call. They contacted the relative in Korea, and he produced what looked like a spreadsheet that showed a phone call had taken place. But it's very odd that it wouldn't have shown up on the phone bill for Misook as an incoming call.
As Barton's defense team continued prepping for trial, their case hinged on presenting Misook Nowlin as an alternative suspect, until suddenly that too was off the table.
The judge barred any evidence relating to Misook.
He, during his trial, would never be able to mention the name Misook Nowlin. The prosecution knew that this was going to be Bart's defense, and so they put together what's called a motion in limine. That basically disbars the jury from hearing certain evidence, and the motion in limine was successful.
The judge didn't think there was enough evidence against Misook to present that as an alternate theory.
I'm very surprised that Bart's attorney was not allowed to argue this alternative theory. But what struck me as interesting in this situation is it seems like this is a Bart versus Misook case, and that's not necessarily accurate. It's the state of Illinois versus Bart McNeil. And just because Bart's innocent doesn't necessarily mean Misook's guilty.
While Barton and his attorneys were scrambling to find a new angle for his defense, Misook was getting into her own share of trouble.
Soon after Christina was murdered, Misook was arrested again, this time for beating her own daughter. It was just too much of a coincidence of timing.
Prior to Misook's arrest, bruises on her daughter's body had caught the attention of school teachers.
I got pulled aside to the principal's office. My principal said there was a report that you have some bruises on your body. She was like, can you tell me, what that was about? They finally got it out of me, and I had to admit that, my mom got mad and, put her, hands on me and, hit me.
She had beaten her with a wooden paper towel holder, and Michelle told her school principal that her mom held her nose closed and said, "What happened to your sister, Christina, is going to happen to you."
Although Michelle's principal gave a statement to Child Services, Michelle says she no longer remembers the specific details of the incident.
Do you recall that incident at all?
It's been so long, to be honest with you. I know that there were times where, she would cover my mouth if I was screaming and, of that nature. But it's been so long, I don't remember 100%. I had so much anxiety as a kid going through an abusive situation with somebody that's supposed to love you.
Misook was ultimately charged with domestic battery of a minor and sentenced to 6 months in jail.
This is an incident that's so close in and so parallels the murder of Christina McNeil. I believe it's absolutely exculpatory evidence from the beginning until the end.
But since Barton's defense team was barred from using Misook as an alternate suspect, this information never came into play at his trial, which began in a McLean County courtroom on July 1st, 1999.
Bart's attorney recommended that Bart accept a bench trial.
Bench trial is tried to the judge. The benefit in that, in theory, is that if you want to keep some of the emotion out of it, you can argue to a judge who's seen these sorts of cases before and may not be quite as swayed by the emotion of a dead child.
In total, the trial lasted just over 6 days. The judge wasted little time before handing down his verdict: guilty of first-degree murder.
The judge decided to throw the book at him, which was a lifetime sentence. At that time, that was the maximum penalty.
When the guilty verdict was rendered, I felt that my life was over. It looks like I'm going to serve the rest of my life in prison for something I didn't do. And worst of all, my daughter's killer is never going to pay a penalty for what was done to her. That's what hurt the most.
For 3 years, Barton attempted to appeal his case to little avail. The only bit of slightly good news came from a resentencing hearing that reduced his sentence from life to 100 years.
It was only reduced because of a legal technicality. With good time, I only have to serve 50 years, and I think I will be 85 years old in 2045 if I outlive this sentence.
At the end of the hearing, Barton gave a statement to the court and a chilling prediction.
I told the court, my wrongful conviction is going to cost the life of some other murder victim down the road. And I believe that's exactly what happened.
10 years later, Linda Tida was dead.
When Misook was convicted for Linda's murder in December 2012, it lent extra credence to what Barton and his supporters had been claiming for over a decade.
When you look at Misook's murder of her mother-in-law, you can see a lot of similarities in the murder of Christina McNeil. She was angry and jealous with Don. They were going through a divorce. She took out his mother. She was going through a very tumultuous breakup with Bart, and she may have murdered his daughter.
Coming up, a potential light at the end of the tunnel appears for Barton as a new team of investigators joins his fight for freedom.
I got in touch with John Hanlon with the Illinois Innocence Project. Within 3 months, they're coming on board to take the case.
But will they uncover the evidence needed to prove Misook Wang's guilt once and for all?
One of the hairs that was found puts Misook inside that room, on that bed, in some kind of capacity.
After Misook Wang's conviction for the murder of Linda Tida in December of 2012, Barton McNeil and his supporters finally saw a glimmer of hope.
I do believe in his innocence strongly,
he's wrongfully incarcerated, and we've got to do our best as his family to free him.
The first major development came just days after Misook's conviction, when Barton's family contacted post-conviction forensic expert Kevin McLean.
That's where it all started at. The family calls me up. I started asking questions about the case and about the circumstances. And I said, holy cow, this whole theory of how the state convicted Bart will not stand up. It was such a circumstantial case, and there is a lot of similarities in the Linda Tida murder case.
What are the odds of two killers meeting each other and engaging in a relationship? If you're to believe the prosecutors, Bart was a killer, and so was Misook, but the odds of that, I think, are astronomically small. It's much more likely that one of them would be a killer and have engaged in two murders.
Kevin immediately took Barton's case to the Illinois Innocence Project.
I got in touch with John Hanlon with the Illinois Innocence Project on this case. Within 3 months, they're coming on board to take the case, which is unheard of.
The Illinois Innocence Project decided to join forces with the Exoneration Project to get some additional medical opinions as to the time of death, how she died, and to delve further into the sexual molestation allegation.
The first thing the new team did was request permission to do touch DNA testing on the evidence from the crime scene.
In the 1999 investigation, touch DNA testing wasn't known at the time.
To get the permission they needed, they had to challenge a cornerstone of the prosecution's original case, the spiderwebs on the window screen.
That then culminated in a hearing in 2014 in which the Innocence Project had arranged an arachnologist, a spiderweb expert, to give testimony.
He said the fact that there was a web there does not indicate much at all. I mean, it could have been weaved in the time between when the murder took place and when the police came to investigate. Spiders can weave a web like that in half an hour or so.
Based on partly that testimony, the judge agreed that, okay, maybe, the apartment was entered into, and therefore, yes, let's let the bed sheets and other items be forensically tested for touch DNA testing.
When the evidence was finally DNA tested after 18 years in storage, Barton's defense team hit pay dirt.
The 2016 results showed overwhelmingly that Misook was all over the bedding. Bart decided to get his own apartment about 10 weeks before the murder took place, so Misook was rarely there.
One of the hairs that was found, and that was actually inside a pillowcase, and that hair was basically consistent with Misook, which is huge. That puts Misook inside that room, on that bed, in some kind of capacity.
Barton's defense team also got a new pathologist and pediatrician to go back over the autopsy findings from 1998.
Some of the top experts in the country looked at the autopsy findings and said there is no evidence of sexual abuse whatsoever. This was poorly done. And with modern science, we know that the signs that at the time may have pointed to sexual abuse, that's not what they mean these days. These are normal things that happen to a body after someone dies. You cannot say in any way, shape, or form that she was sexually abused.
Next, Barton's new attorneys challenged the time of death mentioned in the original autopsy, which stated that Christina died around 10:30 p.m.
The Innocence Project had hired an expert in regards to that analysis about saying there's a 2-hour window from the time that someone ingests food until the time it goes out of their system. And that's been found to be faulty, basically, because they don't take in consideration the higher caloric content that people have now in different types of foods and things like that. So that analogy that they give back there in 1998 was not scientifically sound.
Furthermore, investigators followed up with potential witnesses that police never talked to during the initial investigation. And the biggest new discovery came courtesy of Misook Wang's own family members.
In a previous fit of anger, Misook declared that she had admittedly killed and murdered Christina McNeil.
Why would somebody say something like that? But she did say that and get those affidavits from people.
These affidavits, along with the other exculpatory evidence, could end up being the key to Barton McNeil's freedom.
This confession revelation is now part of Bart's 65-page petition requesting a new trial.
The petition is now in the hands of a judge in Illinois. There is no timeline for their decision.
We believe that at this point in time, this absolutely should count as qualifications for Bart to be given a new trial.
I'm extremely hopeful. You know, it's not like speculative. This is actually factual evidence.
Misook Wang still denies any role in Christina's death and has never been charged in connection to the crime.
I got nothing to do with his case. Anytime he want to talk to me, I can talk to him about it. Why he thinking, I'm the one have a problem with him like that. I don't understand what I do wrong, really,
From the forensic science that was involved, I don't know if my mom, for instance, could have done what was actually reported. It could have been somebody random. Just from my relationship with Bart, it's still really hard for me to believe that he did what he did. He never touched me. He never was ever mean to me.
Surprisingly, even Misook expresses doubts about Barton's guilt.
I don't believe that either because, I know him very well. He loved his daughter. So I don't know what's going on, but it's obviously it's not me.
I absolutely had nothing to do with the killing of my daughter. I think Misook killed my daughter because she wanted to hurt me or because she wanted me back. If Misook was not bagged for killing her mother-in-law, I believe there would be more deaths to follow.
I am not like somebody go to somebody to kill somebody to come back to home to act like sleep. I got all those evidence and alibi there, so I don't know why he thinking that's me. I should not kill my mom, but only I can say is that I don't kill Christina.
Nobody in Blackridge County remembers the exact moment the Harper family stopped talking about the winter of 1981. That is how the most dangerous secrets survive. Not through threats, not through violence, but through silence so complete that children inherit it before they understand its meaning. For 42 years, people drove past Miller Farm without slowing down. They passed the weathered mailbox, the collapsing barn, the endless wheat fields stretching beneath Oklahoma skies, and they told themselves the same story they had repeated for generations. A young woman disappeared. The investigation failed. Time moved on. Case closed. Except time never closes anything. It only buries it deeper. The journal changed everything before a single page had even been read. That was the power of buried truth. Its existence alone destroyed decades of certainty. For 70 years, Blackridge County built its identity upon assumptions so deeply rooted that nobody considered questioning them. Families inherited stories the way they inherited land. Church pews held generations of the same names. Children learned which subjects required silence long before they understood why. Now, an old leather notebook carrying the initials ER threatened to unravel all of it. Night settled heavily over Oklahoma. Rain clouds gathered beyond the horizon. Inside the county evidence facility, Sheriff Rebecca Sloan sat with historians, forensic specialists, and legal observers as technicians carefully documented every page. No shortcuts, no mistakes. History had already suffered enough from both. The paper remained remarkably preserved. Ink faded, but readable. The handwriting belonged to a man who understood that time was running out. Each sentence felt urgent. Each paragraph carried the weight of someone writing not for himself, but for people who might come decades later. The first entries focused on ordinary concerns: weather patterns, crop failures, financial struggles, the daily burdens of rural life. Nothing remarkable. Then the tone shifted. April 18th, 1954. I have seen the original documents. The boundaries everyone recognizes are false. The land was never sold. It was entrusted. Entrusted. Not owned. Not purchased. Entrusted. One word capable of changing generations of history. Another entry followed 3 days later. William says some truths must remain buried for the county to survive. I fear he believes this with all his heart. Sheriff Sloan closed her eyes for a moment. That sentence explained more than decades of official records. People rarely commit terrible acts believing themselves villains. They convince themselves they are protecting something greater. Family, community, prosperity, tradition. History overflows with individuals who harmed others while calling it preservation. William Harper apparently belonged to that long and tragic lineage. Meanwhile, Nathan Harper remained awake inside his farmhouse. Neighbors reported seeing him walking the property after midnight, alone, lantern in hand, moving toward the old barn and returning repeatedly. Human beings under pressure return to familiar rituals. The mind searches for comfort in routine when certainty begins collapsing. Yet there was something desperate about Nathan's movements. Something final. Investigators noticed. They simply waited. Patience. Always patience. Back inside the evidence room, the journal continued revealing fragments of a hidden world. Elijah described meetings involving prominent local families, private gatherings, arguments over documents, discussions conducted behind locked doors. The central concern remained astonishingly consistent. The original trust agreement. Apparently, land belonging to displaced Choctaw families had been placed under temporary stewardship generations earlier. Temporary. The word carried enormous implications. Temporary arrangements eventually require accountability, unless accountability disappears first. According to Elijah's writings, certain families benefited enormously from confusion surrounding those agreements. Land expanded. Oil rights emerged. Wealth accumulated quietly. Nobody wanted outsiders examining old records. Nobody wanted descendants asking difficult questions. And certainly nobody wanted legal challenges. The pieces aligned with terrifying precision. Then came an entry dated July 29th, 1954. 1 week before Elijah officially vanished. The handwriting changed. More hurried. More unstable.
Fear had entered the narrative. William warned me tonight. He says I must stop speaking with federal representatives. He says reopening the trust issue would destroy every family in Blackridge. Another line followed. Short. Sharp. Unforgettable. He spoke as though protecting the town mattered more than justice. Silence filled the room. The same justification, repeated across generations. Protect the community. Protect the family. Protect stability. And if innocent people suffer, if truth disappears, if history becomes a carefully maintained fiction, those become acceptable losses. That realization chilled everyone present, because Clara Harper, decades later, encountered the exact same philosophy. Different people, same fear, same silence, same desperate determination to keep old wounds hidden beneath respectable appearances. Morning arrived with unsettling news. Nathan Harper was gone. His truck remained parked near the farmhouse. His dog wandered the property alone. The barn stood open. Inside, investigators discovered signs of recent activity. Old boxes moved. Floorboards disturbed. Dust patterns interrupted. Nothing overtly criminal. Nothing dramatic. Yet clearly, Nathan had been searching for something. A county-wide alert followed immediately. Reporters flooded local roads. Residents gathered outside diners and churches. The disappearance of the man once considered untouchable transformed public perception overnight. People who defended him now avoided direct statements. Questions spread. Fear spread faster. Sheriff Sloan understood the symbolism. History was moving. The old guardians of silence were losing control. At the same time, Michael Harper uncovered another remarkable piece of family history. Hidden behind loose panels inside his mother's attic rested a small metal box. No lock. No markings. Inside lay photographs. Dozens. Most ordinary. Birthdays. Harvest festivals. Church gatherings. Then one image stopped him cold. Clara. Summer of 1981. Standing beside an elderly Choctaw woman near county records offices. Both smiling. Both holding rolled survey maps. Written on the back in Clara's handwriting. Mrs. Red Elk says the truth was never about ownership. It was about guardianship. The same language. The same concept. Separated by generations. Entrusted. Guardianship. Not possession. Not inheritance. An entirely different understanding of the land itself. Clara had reached conclusions astonishingly similar to Elijah's. She discovered the original narrative was false. And once she understood that, she became dangerous. Not because she sought money. Not because she desired revenge. Because truth, in communities built upon myth, threatens every comfortable certainty people depend upon. By afternoon, historians identified Margaret Red Elk, 92 years old, living on a reservation nearly 200 miles away, one of the last surviving descendants connected to the original trust agreements. When investigators contacted her, she remained silent for several moments. Then she laughed softly, not with amusement, with sadness. I wondered when Blackridge would finally remember. Those words carried generations of exhaustion. She agreed to speak. Her testimony would alter everything. According to family history passed through oral tradition, portions of the land near Miller Farm were never intended for permanent private ownership. They served as protected ground, sacred in certain respects, historically significant. The trust arrangements existed to preserve access for descendants forced from their original communities. Over time, records changed. People died. Economic opportunities emerged. And memory became negotiable. Margaret remembered Clara, the young librarian who arrived in 1981 asking respectful questions. Listening. Learning. Unlike others. Clara promised to help restore forgotten history. She promised to bring documents into public view. Then she vanished. Margaret never heard from her again. Until now. As evening descended over Blackridge County, a terrible understanding settled upon everyone involved. Clara Harper had not stumbled into a family disagreement. She uncovered an entire architecture of silence spanning nearly a century. Elijah Reed tried exposing it. He disappeared. Clara tried exposing it. She disappeared. And Nathan Harper, the living connection between generations, had now vanished into that same landscape. The pattern no longer whispered. It screamed. Somewhere beneath endless Oklahoma skies, old truths continued rising from the earth. And the people who spent lifetimes protecting them were running out of places to hide. The search for Nathan Harper began before sunrise. Helicopters moved across gray Oklahoma skies. Deputies followed dirt roads that cut through wheat fields older than memory. Volunteers gathered outside the sheriff's office despite the bitter wind. Some came out of concern. Others came because they understood something historic was unfolding. The man who once represented stability inside Blackridge County had vanished at the precise moment generations of secrets began surfacing.
People notice patterns. People always notice patterns. They simply decide which ones are safe to discuss.
Sheriff Rebecca Sloan stood beside maps covering the command center wall. Nathan's movements over the previous week formed an unmistakable shape. Farmhouse.
Bon.
Miller Farm. Southern acreage. Back again. Circles. The behavior of someone orbiting history itself. Human beings return to meaningful places when fear strips away everything else. The old man wasn't running from the past. He was moving toward it. Meanwhile, Elijah Reed's journal continued revealing extraordinary truths. Each page carried the weight of a man documenting events he feared nobody would believe. The entries became darker as summer 1954 approached. More urgent, more desperate. June 11th. William insists that prosperity has already become irreversible. He says families depend on the arrangement now. Children depend upon it. Churches depend upon it. He asks me whether justice for the dead outweighs survival for the living. Sheriff Sloan read the passage aloud. Nobody spoke afterward, because the question itself represented one of humanity's oldest moral failures. How many wrongs become acceptable once enough people benefit from them? How many lies transform into tradition simply because challenging them arrives too late? Elijah apparently refused compromise. The journal made that much clear. He intended to contact federal authorities. He intended to challenge local records. He intended to expose the original trust agreements. And, according to later entries, that decision terrified powerful men. Not monsters. Not villains from stories. Neighbors. Friends. Church leaders. Ordinary individuals convinced that preserving stability justified extraordinary silence. The most dangerous people in history rarely believe themselves dangerous. Across Blackridge County, residents gathered inside Hargrove's diner. The atmosphere felt heavy. Television crews occupied nearby tables. Coffee cooled untouched. Older citizens avoided eye contact whenever conversations turned toward William Harper. The dead often enjoy protections unavailable to the living. Questioning legacy feels like questioning identity itself. One elderly farmer finally broke the silence. 85-year-old Leonard Pierce. Lifelong resident. Soft-spoken. Respected. He stared into his coffee before speaking. People knew things weren't right. Nobody interrupted. Not details. Never details. Just feelings. The sort of feelings you learn not to examine. Another pause. Rain began falling outside. Slow. Steady. Familiar. We told ourselves that asking questions would only hurt everyone. The sentence landed with enormous force. Because that philosophy had guided Blackridge County for generations. Protect everyone. Protect peace. Protect tradition. And if truth became collateral damage, so be it. Meanwhile, investigators discovered something remarkable inside Nathan Harper's abandoned barn. Beneath old farming equipment rested a locked wooden trunk. Dust suggested it had remained untouched for years, perhaps decades. A warrant arrived within hours. The opening itself felt ceremonial. History revealing another layer. Inside lay family records, photographs, letters, military memorabilia. Nothing immediately alarming. Then, carefully wrapped in cloth, investigators found a leather folder containing maps. Original maps. Hand-drawn. Dated 1901. The disputed southern acreage appeared clearly. And across its center, written in faded ink. Protected stewardship land. Not private ownership. Not transferable property. Protected stewardship. The same language. Again. The pattern had become undeniable. Nathan possessed evidence contradicting official history. He kept it hidden. Why? Out of guilt? Fear? Duty? Perhaps all three. One note attached to the maps carried only a single sentence in Nathan's handwriting. Grandfather said some truths destroy communities faster than wars. The burden had passed from William to his descendants. Inherited. Maintained. Protected. Not because everyone involved benefited equally. Because nobody wanted responsibility for shattering the world they inherited. At headquarters, Margaret Red Elk arrived that afternoon. 92 years old. Small in stature. Unshakable in presence. She carried herself with the quiet authority of someone who understood history from the inside rather than through documents. The entire room stood when she entered. Respect demanded it. Margaret examined the recovered maps. The photographs. Elijah's journal. No surprise crossed her face. Only sadness. I have seen these before, she said softly. Silence consumed the room. She explained that her grandfather spoke often about the stewardship agreements. The land near Miller Farm held ceremonial significance long before county lines existed. Temporary guardians managed portions of it under promises that future generations would maintain access and recognition. Promises. Human civilization depends upon promises, and human history overflows with broken ones. Margaret continued. Economic hardship changed everything. Oil exploration created temptation. Families grew. Money arrived. Memory weakened. People convinced themselves that forgotten obligations no longer mattered, until forgetting became official policy. Then came a sentence that altered the entire investigation. Elijah Reed wasn't trying to claim ownership. Sheriff Sloan leaned forward. What was he trying to do? Margaret closed her eyes. Return what never belonged to him. The room fell utterly silent. For decades, everyone misunderstood the conflict. Elijah wasn't fighting to keep land. He was fighting to restore it, to honor agreements older than any living resident. That explained everything. And it explained why he became dangerous. Returning land threatens wealth. It threatens influence. Threatens identities constructed across generations. People who inherit benefits rarely surrender them willingly, especially when those benefits become indistinguishable from community survival. The implications reached Clara immediately. She learned the same truth. She met Margaret, studied old maps, read forgotten documents, and likely reached the same conclusion. The Harper family legacy rested upon an unresolved injustice stretching back nearly a century. Not theft in the ordinary sense. Something more complicated, more tragic. A collective decision to prioritize prosperity over promises. Night approached. Search teams continued looking for Nathan. No success. No sightings. Nothing. Until a deputy discovered tire tracks near an abandoned chapel 6 miles outside Blackridge. The structure dated back to the early 20th century. Unused. Neglected. Built close to the original stewardship boundaries. Sheriff Sloan arrived within minutes. Nathan's truck sat nearby. Empty. Rain tapped against rusted metal. The chapel itself appeared frozen in time. Peeling paint. Broken windows. Weathered crosses leaning slightly toward the earth. Inside, lantern light flickered. Someone had been there recently. On the front pew rested a single object. An envelope. Addressed simply. For Clara. The handwriting belonged to Nathan Harper. 42 years after her disappearance. 42 years after silence became inheritance. The old man had finally decided to speak. But where he had gone, and whether he intended to return, remained another mystery waiting in the dark. 42 years after Clara Harper vanished, Nathan Harper finally left behind something more powerful than silence. He left words. The envelope rested alone on the front pew of the abandoned chapel as rain whispered against broken stained glass and cold wind moved through cracks in century-old timber. No dramatic message.
No elaborate confession.
Just 2 handwritten words. For Clara. Sheriff Rebecca Sloan approached it with extraordinary caution. Not because of explosives. Not because of forensic concerns. Because history itself can be fragile. Some truths survive only once. Inside the envelope rested 11 pages. Yellow paper. Shaking handwriting. Years of restraint collapsing into ink. The first sentence silenced everyone in the room. I spent my entire life trying to protect people from a truth that should have been spoken before I was born. Outside, thunder rolled across the plains. Nature seemed determined to accompany every revelation. Nathan wrote without excuses, without demands for forgiveness, without attempts to portray himself as a victim. That alone unsettled investigators. People preparing for deception usually defend themselves. Nathan appeared exhausted beyond defense. He described growing up beneath the enormous shadow of William Harper, the family patriarch, the man everyone respected, the man nobody questioned, the man who taught children that survival mattered more than fairness. Certain conversations remained forbidden. Certain documents remained hidden. Certain names remained spoken only in private. Elijah Reed belonged to that forbidden world. Nathan remembered hearing arguments as a child. He remembered his father insisting that old promises made to indigenous families could no longer be honored. Too much depended upon the land now. Too many people relied upon prosperity built over generations. Returning anything would destroy everyone. The language never changed. Destroy everyone. The same phrase echoed through decades like a curse passed from parent to child. Then came another passage. One investigators read 3 separate times. Clara learned what Elijah learned. She understood that ownership was never the question. Responsibility was. Responsibility. Not possession. Not inheritance. Responsibility. The distinction changed everything. According to Nathan's letter, Clara never intended public humiliation. Never intended lawsuits. Never intended revenge. She wanted acknowledgement. Truth. Recognition of promises abandoned long ago. She believed communities could heal through honesty. Nathan believed honesty would tear Blackridge apart. Fear won. For a time. The letter continued. October 1981. 3 weeks before Clara disappeared. Nathan admitted they argued repeatedly. Violently. Not physically. Emotionally. She accused older generations of building peace upon silence. He accused her of risking lives for events nobody alive could change. Both believed they acted morally. Both misunderstood the price waiting ahead. Then came the sentence that transformed the entire case. I followed her to Miller Farm on the night everything ended. The air inside the chapel became impossibly heavy. Sheriff Sloan read slowly, carefully. Every word mattered. Clara arranged a meeting. Not with Nathan. With someone else. Someone connected to the original stewardship agreements. Someone who possessed documents proving Elijah Reed never disappeared voluntarily. Nathan learned about the meeting accidentally. Or perhaps fate intervened. He drove there hoping to stop her. To convince her. To preserve what remained of family dignity. Instead, he arrived too late. The letter stopped. Several lines remained crossed out. Ink smeared. Hands shaking. The next paragraph began lower on the page. There were 3 people there before I arrived. 3. Not 2. The entire investigation shifted once again. For decades, everyone assumed Clara disappeared within a conflict involving family members. Now another presence emerged. Another participant. Another witness. Nathan refused to identify them immediately. Instead, he described chaos. Raised voices. Arguments about old documents. Accusations stretching across generations. The past itself had gathered at Miller Farm that night. And somewhere inside that confrontation, tragedy occurred. Yet Nathan's wording remained painfully specific. Nobody intended for Clara to disappear. Not murder. Not planning. Not conspiracy. Something else. Something sudden. Something irreversible. Back at headquarters, investigators mapped every known connection once again. New lines appeared. New possibilities. If 3 individuals met Clara that evening, then the history of Blackridge County involved more participants than previously imagined. Who else protected the silence? Who else inherited responsibility for maintaining it? Meanwhile, search teams continued looking for Nathan. No signs. No footprints.
No abandoned clothing.
Nothing. It was as though the old man dissolved into the same landscape that swallowed so many answers before him. People throughout town reacted to the letter's existence with visible unease. Nobody knew its contents. Rumors spread anyway. They always do. Church attendance doubled. Older residents avoided journalists. Some families canceled planned gatherings altogether. History was no longer academic. It had become personal. Margaret Red Elk remained inside Blackridge longer than expected. At 92, she possessed a calm few others could imitate. She listened to Nathan's statements without surprise, then offered a perspective nobody considered. People think silence protects memory, she said softly. The room listened. But silence changes memory. After enough years, nobody remembers what they were protecting in the first place. The sentence lingered. Profound. Terrifying. Perhaps William Harper genuinely believed he saved the community. Perhaps Nathan inherited that belief sincerely. Perhaps entire generations acted from fear rather than cruelty. Yet victims remained victims regardless of intention. Elijah Reed lost his life as he knew it. Clara Harper lost everything. Good intentions cannot resurrect stolen years. That evening, forensic analysts completed examinations of the maps found inside Nathan's barn. One detail immediately commanded attention. Handwritten coordinates. Tiny, almost invisible, marked near the original stewardship boundaries. Not at Miller Farm. Further east, near a dried riverbed abandoned decades earlier. The notation beside them contained only 4 words. Original council meeting place. Sheriff Sloan stared at the discovery. The phrase suggested history extending far beyond private ownership disputes. Perhaps important decisions occurred there. Perhaps documents remained hidden. Perhaps Elijah visited that location. Perhaps Clara did too. Night fell quickly. Rain returned. Blackridge County seemed trapped beneath endless storms. Nature refusing to allow sunlight while old ghosts continued rising. At 10:30, another development arrived. A state archivist reviewing historical records uncovered correspondence between federal officials and local leaders dating back to 1953. Most letters involved ordinary administrative concerns. One stood apart. The writer warned that unresolved stewardship obligations required immediate attention. Failure to address them, he argued, could create significant legal and social consequences for future generations. Future generations. The warning proved devastatingly accurate. Nobody listened. Nobody acted. And children inherited silence instead. Sheriff Sloan looked again at Nathan's unfinished confession. 3 people waited at Miller Farm that night. One of them was Clara. One was almost certainly connected to the old agreements. The third remained unknown. Perhaps the final keeper of Blackridge County's greatest secret. Somewhere beyond rain-soaked fields and forgotten boundaries, Nathan Harper carried answers that history had demanded for more than 70 years. Whether he intended to reveal them completely remained uncertain. But one truth had become impossible to ignore. The mystery surrounding Clara Harper was never about a single disappearance. It was about an entire community deciding, generation after generation, exactly how much truth it believed ordinary people could survive. An entire community had spent generations deciding how much truth ordinary people could survive. That realization haunted Blackridge County more than any rumor, any accusation, or any buried document. Because if the town's history rested upon carefully measured silence, then everyone, whether knowingly or not, had become part of the machinery that kept it alive. The storms finally broke on a cold October morning. For the first time in days, sunlight touched the wheat fields surrounding Miller Farm. The landscape looked peaceful. Deceptively peaceful. History often hides beneath beautiful places. Sheriff Rebecca Sloan stood inside the command center studying Nathan Harper's letter for what felt like the 100th time. 3 people waited at Miller Farm that night. Clara, an unknown figure connected to the original stewardship agreements, and someone else. The third person had become the center of everything. Because people rarely vanish during conversations. They vanish when fear enters the room. Fear changes intentions. Fear destroys reason. Fear convinces ordinary individuals that irreversible decisions represent temporary solutions. Somewhere inside those missing moments, the entire mystery waited. Meanwhile, search efforts for Nathan expanded eastward. The coordinates found on his hidden maps led toward Dry Willow Creek, an abandoned river channel nearly forgotten by modern residents. Once, long before highways and county boundaries, it served as a meeting place for indigenous communities and early settlers. Then progress arrived. Roads changed. Commerce moved elsewhere. Memory faded. Nature reclaimed what human beings stopped visiting. Deputies reached the location shortly after dawn. The area felt untouched. Ancient cottonwoods stretched across open ground. Stone formations emerged from tall grass. Birdsong replaced the noise of civilization. And at the center of the clearing stood something extraordinary. A circular arrangement of weathered stones. Deliberate. Ceremonial. Older than anyone present. the original council meeting place. Nathan's notes had been accurate. History still existed here, waiting. Investigators searched carefully. No signs of Nathan. No recent campsites. No abandoned belongings. Then one deputy noticed tire tracks partially preserved beneath wet soil.
Fresh.
Only a few days old. Nathan had been there. He came willingly. Perhaps seeking answers. Perhaps seeking forgiveness. Perhaps preparing for something final. Back in Blackridge, Margaret Red Elk joined Sheriff Sloan at the site later that afternoon. The elderly historian moved slowly between the stones. Recognition crossed her face. Sadness followed. "My grandfather brought me here when I was a child," she said quietly. Nobody interrupted. "He told me promises made on this ground carried responsibilities beyond individual lifetimes." Responsibilities. The same word Clara embraced. The same word Nathan feared. The same word Elijah died protecting. Margaret pointed toward a shallow rise overlooking the creek. Important records were sometimes hidden nearby during difficult times. Not to conceal truth, to preserve it. The distinction mattered. Some people bury things to erase them. Others bury things to save them. History depends upon understanding which motivation came first. Excavation began carefully. Hours passed. Nothing. Then, near sunset, shovels struck metal. The sound echoed across the clearing. Everyone stopped. A small iron container emerged from the earth. Rust covered its surface. Time had nearly consumed it, yet the seal remained intact. For a moment, nobody moved. Generations of silence balanced upon a single object. Inside rested documents wrapped in oilcloth. Maps. Correspondence. And a formal agreement dated 1891. The original stewardship charter. Every signature remained visible. Every condition clearly stated. The land surrounding Miller Farm had never been transferred permanently. It was entrusted to temporary caretakers until designated descendants could reclaim communal oversight. The language left no room for interpretation. No ambiguity. No loopholes. Everything generations believed about ownership stood upon a misunderstanding or a deliberate deception. Margaret closed her eyes. Tears formed slowly. Not triumph. Not vindication.
Grief.
The kind carried by families forced to watch promises dissolve across time. Sheriff Sloan understood the magnitude immediately. This was no longer merely a criminal investigation. It was historical reconstruction. The restoration of memory itself. And somewhere inside that restored memory lay Clara Harper. Because she had discovered this, or something dangerously close to it. The question remained. Who else knew? The answer arrived unexpectedly. That evening, State Archives transmitted newly uncovered correspondence from 1981. One letter, never mailed, found among personal effects belonging to Judge Harold Whitmore, deceased since 1994. The recipient line read, "Miss Clara Harper." The contents froze investigators. Your concerns regarding the original stewardship documents possess merit. However, certain families have expressed profound fear regarding public disclosure. I strongly advise caution before pursuing this matter further. Caution. Another gentle word concealing enormous danger. The letter continued. I believe some individuals would rather preserve inherited peace than confront inherited wrongdoing. There it was. The philosophy guiding Blackridge across generations. Inherited peace. At what cost? Elijah understood the cost. Clara understood it. Nathan understood it too late. Night settled over Oklahoma once more. Stars emerged above endless fields. The storms had passed. Yet something heavier remained in the air. Expectation. As though history itself sensed resolution approaching. Then, at 11:17 p.m., dispatch received a call. Single sentence. Male voice. Exhausted. I know where Nathan Harper is. The line remained open. No background noise. Only breathing. Sheriff Sloan responded immediately. Who is this? Silence. Then, I was the third person at Miller Farm in 1981. Every conversation inside the station stopped. Every movement ceased. 42 years of mystery narrowed into one impossible moment. The caller continued. I have lived with this every day since Clara disappeared. His voice trembled, not with fear, with age, with regret heavy enough to bend an entire lifetime. I kept silent because we believed telling the truth would destroy Blackridge. We were wrong. The same realization. Again. Generation after generation discovering too late that silence protects nothing except suffering. Where is Nathan? Sloane asked. A long pause followed. The kind of pause filled with memories no human being wishes to revisit. He's waiting at Miller Ridge Cemetery. Wind moved softly through the station parking lot. The world itself seemed to hold its breath. Waiting for what? The answer arrived as little more than a whisper. To finally tell Clara what happened that night. And for the first time in 42 years, the possibility of truth no longer felt distant. It felt immediate, terrifying, and impossibly close. And buried things have a habit of returning when people least expect them. Especially in places where everyone knows everyone, where church attendance matters more than questions, where family names carry more weight than facts, and where loyalty becomes a currency more valuable than truth itself. On a freezing November morning in 1981, 24-year-old Clara Harper walked out of her mother's house just after sunrise. She never came back. The newspapers called it a mysterious disappearance. State investigators called it a probable runaway. Neighbors called it a tragedy. But inside Blackridge County, among older residents who lowered their voices whenever her name surfaced, another phrase survived. Cold case. Cold case with too many witnesses and not enough answers. Cold case with footprints that ended in open fields. Cold case with a family that seemed strangely determined to heal faster than grief should allow. And perhaps most unsettling of all, a cold case involving people who continued living side by side as though nothing irreversible had happened. Because when terror arrives in small communities, it rarely announces itself with screams. It arrives quietly. It sits beside you in church. It shakes your hand at the grocery store. It smiles for photographs. Clara Harper understood that better than anyone. By every account, she was impossible to ignore. A school librarian. Volunteer choir singer. The woman who remembered birthdays and brought casseroles to grieving neighbors. People trusted her. Children adored her. Elderly residents depended on her kindness. She represented the best version of Blackridge County, which made her disappearance not merely heartbreaking. It made it incomprehensible. Good people weren't supposed to vanish. Not there. Not in places where front doors remained unlocked and families gathered every Sunday beneath the same church roof their grandparents had built decades earlier. Yet on November 14, 1981, certainty disappeared alongside Clara Harper. The morning itself seemed ordinary. Cold winds, heavy clouds, the smell of rain lingering somewhere beyond the horizon. Clara planned to meet someone that afternoon. Nobody knew who. Nobody asked enough questions. Regret would grow from that oversight for generations. Her mother later recalled something strange. Clara looked distracted during breakfast. Not frightened. Not anxious. Resolved. As though she had already made a decision and accepted whatever consequences waited beyond it. Human beings recognize determination only after tragedy transforms memory into evidence. At the time, it meant nothing. Afterward, it meant everything. By evening, concerns spread across the county. Her car remained missing. Her workplace heard nothing. Friends received no calls. No explanations. No goodbye. Sheriff Thomas Whitaker launched immediate searches. Volunteers flooded roads and fields carrying flashlights and hope. The entire community united against uncertainty. Or at least that was the story people preferred. Reality possessed sharper edges. Because while some residents searched desperately, others watched quietly from porches. Others avoided cameras. Others offered information so carefully measured it sounded rehearsed. Investigators noticed. They always notice. The challenge lies in proving what instinct already understands. 3 days later, Clara's vehicle appeared abandoned near Red Cedar Creek. Engine cold. Doors locked. Purse untouched. Keys missing. The scene generated more questions than answers. Runaways do not leave money behind. They do not abandon family without warning. They do not vanish into empty farmland without footprints leading somewhere. Yet Clara Harper had done precisely that. Or someone wanted investigators to believe she had. The newspapers descended immediately. Headlines screamed across Oklahoma. Mystery rocks Blackridge County. Local librarian vanishes without trace. Cold case fears emerge as search continues. Communities survive tragedies through stories. The first story insisted Clara would return. The second story suggested she left voluntarily. The third story, spoken only in whispers, claimed she discovered something she was never supposed to know. Whispers travel faster than facts, and sometimes they prove far more accurate. Sheriff Whitaker worked the case relentlessly. Weeks became months. Months became years. Every lead dissolved. Every witness remembered less. Every season layered fresh soil upon unanswered questions. Officially, the case remained active. Unofficially, everyone understood the truth. Blackridge County possessed a ghost. And ghosts demand accommodation. Life continued. Children grew up. Businesses changed ownership. Churches renovated sanctuaries. People married, divorced, and grew old. Meanwhile, Clara Harper remained 24 forever. Frozen in photographs. Preserved in memory. Waiting. The Harper family carried their grief differently. Her mother never changed the bedroom. Her younger brother, Michael, left Oklahoma entirely. Her father stopped attending community events. Silence expanded around them like winter ice. Not bitterness. Not anger. Exhaustion. The kind born from repeating the same unanswered questions for decades. What happened? Who knew? Why did nobody speak? Time offered no mercy. Then, in the spring of 2023, everything changed. Not because investigators uncovered miraculous evidence. Not because technology performed impossible feats. But because an old man preparing for death decided he could no longer carry what he knew. 87-year-old Walter Grayson lived alone outside Blackridge. Former mechanic. Church elder. Respected citizen. The sort of man communities trust instinctively. One afternoon, he requested a meeting with his daughter. No drama. No theatrics. Just quiet determination. He handed her a sealed envelope and delivered a sentence that would eventually shake an entire county. When I'm gone, give this to the sheriff. Some things stayed buried long enough. People spend entire lifetimes constructing walls around memory. Near the end, many discover those walls were prisons all along. Walter died 6 weeks later. The envelope arrived at the sheriff's office on a rainy Tuesday morning. Inside rested 3 photographs, a handwritten note,
and one name.
Nathan Harper, Clara's older cousin, the last person publicly known to have spoken with her before she disappeared. For 42 years, Nathan existed beyond suspicion. Farmer, veteran, community leader, the dependable man people trusted with spare keys and difficult conversations. The kind of person whose reputation becomes indistinguishable from fact. Walter's note changed everything. It contained only a few lines. Yet every word landed like thunder. I saw Clara arguing with Nathan near Miller Farm the night before she vanished. She looked frightened. He looked desperate. I stayed silent because everyone said protecting the family mattered more than reopening wounds. God forgive me. They were wrong. The entire investigation shifted in a single moment. Not proof, not certainty, but movement. Real movement. After 4 decades of absolute stillness, the sheriff's office reopened the case immediately. New detectives examined old evidence with modern tools. Dust-covered files emerged from storage rooms. Forgotten witness statements returned to daylight. Photographs once considered meaningless gained entirely new significance. History itself seemed to awaken. Blackridge County reacted with disbelief. Nathan Harper?
Impossible.
People rejected the suggestion instinctively. He coached youth baseball. He organized church fundraisers. He cared for elderly neighbors during harsh winters. Monsters belonged elsewhere. Not here. Never here. But communities have repeated those exact words throughout human history. The most dangerous assumption is believing evil always announces itself dramatically. Sometimes it wears familiar faces. Sometimes it shares your last name. Sometimes it spends 40 years helping build the very town whose secrets it desperately hopes remain buried. As investigators reconstructed Clara's final week, patterns emerged. Small details. Overlooked details. The kind that mean nothing independently, but everything collectively. Clara had been asking questions. About family land transfers. About old property deeds. About missing financial records connected to Miller Farm.
People remembered now.
Memory functions strangely. Truth often grants permission for forgotten details to return. A neighbor recalled Clara visiting county archives repeatedly during October of 1981. A church friend remembered her mentioning concerns about inherited property rights. Another witness remembered hearing Clara say something unsettling only days before she vanished. Families keep secrets longer than governments do. Nobody understood what she meant.
Not then.
Perhaps not even now. Yet the sentence lingered. Because secrets represent power. And power rarely surrenders itself willingly. Night fell over Blackridge County on the day the case officially reopened. Rain tapped softly against courthouse windows. Reporters gathered beneath streetlights. Residents spoke quietly over coffee in 24-hour diners. The old story was dying. A new story had begun. And somewhere beneath decades of silence, beneath inherited loyalty and carefully protected appearances, the truth about Clara Harper waited with extraordinary patience, waiting for someone brave enough to disturb the ground above it. Rain settled over Blackridge County like a memory refusing to disappear. The reopening of Clara Harper's case changed the atmosphere overnight. People lowered their voices in grocery stores. Church conversations ended when strangers approached. Old photographs resurfaced from attics and dresser drawers. A mystery that belonged to the past had suddenly become present tense. And present tense questions are far more dangerous, because they demand answers from people who believe time had already protected them. Sheriff Rebecca Sloan understood that immediately. She inherited the department long after the original investigation collapsed into silence, but she knew one fundamental truth about cold cases. Evidence grows older. Guilt does not. Some burdens become heavier with every passing year. Walter Grayson's letter sat at the center of her desk. A dying man's confession. A single accusation. One name capable of shaking an entire county. Nathan Harper. Family man.
War Veteran.
Owner of nearly 600 acres surrounding Miller Farm. For 4 decades, nobody connected him to Clara's disappearance. Now, everything required reevaluation. Investigators reopened every interview conducted in 1981. Thousands of pages. Yellow documents. Coffee stains. Handwritten notes from officers who had long since retired or died. History preserved in cardboard boxes. Waiting. Patterns emerged quickly. Nathan's original statement looked remarkably clean. Too clean. He claimed to have spoken with Clara briefly at a church gathering 2 days before she vanished. Nothing unusual. Nothing memorable. Nothing worth further attention. Yet Walter Grayson insisted he witnessed an argument near Miller Farm on the very eve of her disappearance.
Someone lied.
Perhaps Walter. Perhaps Nathan. Perhaps both men carried different versions of the same painful memory. The challenge lay in discovering which version deserved trust. Across town, older residents reacted with visible discomfort. Not outrage. Not disbelief. Discomfort. The emotion people experience when old certainties begin collapsing. At Hargrove's Diner, conversations drifted inevitably toward Clara. Always Clara. The woman who never truly left Blackridge. A retired schoolteacher named Louise Bennett remembered something investigators overlooked decades earlier. Clara had become obsessed with family records during the months before her disappearance. Property deeds, inheritance documents, tax filings, ordinary paperwork, until one understands that land means power in rural Oklahoma. And power creates secrets, especially when those secrets span generations. Louise described Clara as determined, focused, restless. She believed something about the Harper family estate didn't make sense. Nobody listened carefully enough. At the time, curiosity seemed harmless. After all, families argue about land constantly. Nothing unusual, nothing criminal, nothing worthy of fear, unless the argument concerns more than land. Meanwhile, Nathan Harper remained alive, 74 years old, living alone outside Blackridge in the same farmhouse where he raised 3 children. The news reached him quickly.
Small communities guarantee that.
Reporters appeared before sunset. He declined interviews. Neighbors described him as shaken, quiet, withdrawn. For the first time in decades, Nathan stopped attending morning coffee gatherings at the general store. People noticed. Communities always notice changes in routine. Sheriff Sloan refused immediate confrontation. Experience demanded patience. Cold cases resemble fragile structures. Push too hard, and important pieces collapse before revealing how they connect. Instead, investigators focused on Clara herself. Who was she during those final months? What occupied her thoughts? Who did she trust? What frightened her? The answers mattered. Victims often solve their own mysteries if people learn to listen carefully enough. Clara worked at Blackridge Community Library. The building still stood. Same wooden floors. Same narrow windows overlooking Main Street. A younger librarian helped researchers access archived materials untouched for decades. Among old employee files sat something unexpected. A notebook. Simple. Unremarkable. Containing reading recommendations and scheduling information. But near the final pages, several handwritten observations appeared. Private notes. Questions. Names.
Dates.
The handwriting matched Clara's. Investigators gathered carefully around the evidence table. Most entries meant nothing. Book orders. Volunteer schedules. Community events. Then one line altered everything. Grandfather's records don't match county filings. Ask Nathan again. Silence. Absolute silence. Because Nathan Harper had suddenly reappeared inside Clara's personal concerns. Not as family. Not as comfort. As a question. Another note followed. Why was the southern acreage transferred twice? And another. Someone changed documents after 1968. Ordinary sentences. Extraordinary implications. Property disputes create bitterness. Fraud creates fear. Generational deception creates something much darker. Sheriff Sloan ordered immediate examination of Harper family land records. Modern databases accomplished in hours what investigators in 1981 could never have managed. The results arrived before midnight. Several property transfers contained inconsistencies. Missing signatures. Revised dates. Boundaries adjusted without clear explanations. Nothing proving criminal conduct. Nothing impossible. Yet enough irregularities existed to demand attention. The southern acreage particularly stood out. Nearly 200 acres bordering Miller Farm. Officially inherited through lawful channels. Unofficially, the paperwork looked chaotic. Someone had worked very hard to create certainty where confusion naturally existed. Human beings rarely invest enormous effort in matters lacking significance. The next morning brought another surprise. Michael Harper returned to Blackridge. Clara's younger brother had avoided Oklahoma for more than 30 years. California became home. Distance became survival. Now, at 64, he walked back into a community frozen in unresolved grief. Reporters followed him relentlessly. He ignored them. Sheriff Sloan met him privately. Time had carved exhaustion into his face. Yet his memory remained remarkably clear. Michael remembered Clara changing during her final year. Not dramatically.
Subtly.
She spent evenings reviewing old family documents, visiting elderly relatives, asking uncomfortable questions about inheritance and property ownership. Their father hated it. Nathan hated it even more. The room became still. Did they argue?
Sloan asked.
Michael nodded slowly. All the time. Over what? Another pause. Clara believed somebody stole land from another branch of the family decades earlier. The sentence lingered.
Stole land.
Not inherited. Not disputed.
Stole.
Words matter. Especially words surviving 40 years. Michael continued. She discovered inconsistencies involving their grandfather's estate. Certain heirs received nothing. Certain signatures looked questionable. People who should have owned property disappeared from official narratives entirely. Clara wanted answers. Nathan wanted peace. Peace and truth rarely coexist comfortably. Outside, rain returned.
Heavy.
Persistent. The kind of Oklahoma rain that transforms dirt roads into rivers of mud and makes old houses creak with memory. Blackridge County seemed to hold its breath. Every conversation now carried an unspoken question. What exactly had Clara found? And, more importantly, what frightened people enough to remain silent for generations? That evening, investigators visited county archives. Basement storage. Dust-covered ledgers. Handwritten records predating digital systems. History in its rawest form. A young analyst named Aaron Walsh noticed something remarkable. The original ownership maps from the 1950s differed significantly from modern boundaries. Entire sections of southern farmland changed hands under circumstances poorly documented. Names vanished. Parcels merged. Records corrected themselves with suspicious efficiency. At the center of every revision stood one familiar surname. Harper. The realization spread slowly. Cold. Uncomfortable. Perhaps Clara's disappearance never began with personal conflict. Perhaps it began with history itself. With decisions made decades before she was born. With secrets inherited alongside land and family traditions. Because some crimes outlive their perpetrators. They pass quietly from one generation to the next, disguised as normality. Protected by silence. Protected by loyalty. Protected by the belief that exposing ancient wrongs serves no purpose except reopening wounds. But wounds never truly close when truth remains buried beneath them. Late that night, Sheriff Sloan received a phone call. Anonymous. Older female voice.
Soft.
Careful. The caller refused to provide a name. Yet her message arrived with astonishing clarity. Clara wasn't looking for missing land, she whispered. A pause. Rain tapping against windows. Breathing. Controlled. She was looking for the reason somebody disappeared in 1954. The sheriff remained perfectly still. Another disappearance. Another ghost. Another layer beneath an already impossible mystery. Who disappeared?
Sloan asked.
Silence. Then 4 words. Ask about Elijah Reed. The line went dead.
No explanation.
No identity. Nothing except a name forgotten by nearly everyone in Blackridge County. Except, apparently, Clara Harper. And perhaps the people who feared what she might eventually uncover. Nobody in Blackridge County had spoken the name Elijah Reed out loud in decades. Not because they forgot. People rarely forget tragedies. They simply learn which memories are permitted to survive in public and which ones must remain locked behind polite silence. Sheriff Rebecca Sloan understood immediately that the anonymous caller had handed her something dangerous. Not evidence. Not proof. A direction. And directions matter when a cold case has spent 42 years moving nowhere at all. Elijah Reed. The name sounded ordinary. The implications felt anything but. By sunrise, investigators were digging through county archives that predated modern record systems. Handwritten census books. Church registries. Land maps preserved beneath layers of dust and indifference. History is patient. It waits quietly for someone willing to ask the right question. They found Elijah Reed shortly before noon. Farmer. Age 32.
Married.
2 children. Owner of 87 acres bordering what would later become Southern Harper property. Then, In August of 1954, he vanished. No body. No criminal investigation. No major newspaper coverage. Just absence. The official explanation described him as a man who abandoned his family during difficult financial times. Case closed. Life moved forward. Except life rarely moves forward cleanly when entire communities participate in forgetting. Something immediately stood out. 6 months after Elijah disappeared, portions of his land transferred into Harper family ownership. Legally. Proper documentation. Correct signatures. At least on paper. Sheriff Sloan stared at the records in silence. Clara Harper had been investigating missing property transfers. Now an older disappearance had surfaced. 2 mysteries. Separated by 27 years.
Connected by land. Connected by family.
Connected, perhaps, by secrets powerful enough to survive generations. Across town, Michael Harper remained at his late mother's house. The building smelled of cedar and old photographs. Nothing significant had changed. Grief preserves places in strange ways. He sat for hours remembering Clara. Not the mystery. Not the headlines. The person. She loved thunderstorms. Collected antique books. Believed that truth mattered even when it caused pain. Especially when it caused pain. That belief defined her. And perhaps destroyed her. When Sheriff Sloan visited later that afternoon, Michael surprised her.